Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today we're going to Masechtas Yevamos Daf Sadi Aleph. We are going to begin on Sadi Amud Beis at the very, very bottom by the two dots. So we were learning in our parak, the Mishnah told us, in the event that a husband went to Medina Sayyam and all of a sudden someone said, your husband died. So, as the Mishnah says, she gets remarried and then her husband comes. Obviously, he's not dead. So, in this, the Mishnah tells us that she has to leave both relationships with a get, and it discusses other things as well. So, in this, we say, Haisa Bas Yisrael, if this woman that this happened to is a Bas Yisrael, Nifsel Min Kahuna. At this point, she is now apostle from being able to marry a Kohen. So on Bechul. And on this we continued Sadi Aleph Amud Aleph. L'cher Pshita. After all, she falls into the category of Zaina. So on this, the Gemara says you're right. That's not a Chiddush, but Bas Levi min a Maisit Tzrichalei. The Chiddush is if she was a Bas Levi regarding her ability to eat Meiser Rishon. Bas Levi min a Meiser mi Mifsala. Biznos? Is it true that a woman who is a Bas Levi, that this happens to her, that she's not able to now eat Meiser? Basanya, we learn Levia Shenishbis, if you have a Levia that was in captivity, and in this Rashi says, we're Chayish, that maybe the Ovid Kachavim who captured her had bia with her, which would render her under the category of Zaina, O Shenivala Bilas Nos. So the din is it says beferish that she's still allowed to eat meiser. So what is this other case? Rashi says that she has bias nusman or kachavin or an eved v'chol. So in all these situations we saw previously that the mislubahu bas kayin b'truma. That when it comes to if it was a bas kayin, you're right, she would be possible to eat truma. But a Bas Levi, she's not possible from eating Meiser. So Gemara answers, Rav Sheshes Kanasa. Me'ikar Adin, you're right, she should be allowed to eat Meiser Rishon. But as we mentioned, because she was not Daika Mitzvah, she should have been more careful before she got remarried. Therefore, the din is that she's also not allowed to eat Meiser. Bas Kayin made a truma, so Afil B'truma de Rabbanan. The Chiddush is, says Rashi, Il B'truma de Reis Lo Itzrich. We don't need to tell us that she can't eat truma deraisa. The kansua a meiser kol shekin a truma, because we kanas her on meiser, kol shekin are going to be kanasing her on truma. So therefore, it's coming to tell you the din is even by truma derabanan. Vein yarshin yarshav sholzeh v'yarshav sholzeh yarshin ksubasa. Now, when it comes to the yarshim of the first or the second husband, when she dies, they will not be able to be yarsh the ksuba. So Gemara asks the question: ksuba my vidita. We mentioned in the Mishnah that there is no ksuba. So what do you mean she collects the ksub? They don't collect the ksuba. There's no ksuba to be collected. So Amar Papa, ksuba's been dichrin. We're talking about the ksuba's been dichrin of the male sons. Says Rashi, quoting the morning ksubas, which talks about the ksuba's been dichrin. Any male sons you have for me, inoin yarti kesef ksubasich. They will inherit the monies of your ksuba. Yasser al cholkoin achuhoin, more than that of the brothers. Skipping a few lines. Yimesh sacharim, if there are male sons, nothing ksubas iman, then they will inherit the ksuba of the mother. V'afagav the mesa b'chayav, even if she died in his lifetime. The rabbanan tikkun ksubas bin dichrin. Nonetheless, we still institute this concept. Today, shichvoitz adam yitin levito kivnoi, in order that a man should literally jump and give his daughter over kivnoi, just like his son. V'hacha says Rashi lo shakle yarshin diluk subas bin dichrin. They won't be able to collect this part. Ela b'nei haksherim noiting subas iman v'ashar chalkim l'shav. Rather, the b'nei kshera will take the ksuv of the mother, and the rest is divided equally. So pshita, so madatema l'dida the avdo esura kansura rabbanon. When it comes to her, we're going to kanas her because she made the mistake. Was zarlo kansura rabbanon, but the children were not going to kanas kamashmulan. Achav sholzeh v'achav sholzeh cholzav lo miyamin. So in the case, let's say one of them dies, so we're not going to allow chalitza or yibum to take place Again, if the first husband or the second husband dies, we don't do chalitza or yibum. So achav shel rishon, even though the truth is she really is married to the first guy, the second one was not a marriage because she can't be married to two men, so she was really still married to the first guy. So what's the din about that we say cholton v'lo miyamin, that chalitza is done? So choyletz midaraisa. The first one is a real chalitza because she's really married, and therefore when her husband dies childless, so that really is a chalitza that needs to be done. V'lo miyabim midrabanan. When we say that yibum is not done, that is a din d'Rabbanan, because technically, again, yibum should be able to be done. However, because of this unusual circumstance, we say she can't. The second one, because they're not really married, the whole din of chalitza to begin with is only the Rabbanan. And there's obviously no potential of being able to do yibum not the rest of the Rabbanan, and therefore it cannot be done. Question 14. So achav shel rishon chayos midaraisa v'lo miyabim midarabanan. Achav shel sheni chayos midarabanan v'lo miyabim midaraisa. Okay, that's the last question for that. So let's continue now with the next piece of Gemara. This goes back to pay hey, so I'll put that test there. Okay, so let's continue. So the Gemara now discusses Rav Yosi Omer Ksubasa al Nichse Bala. So he actually says, unlike the Tanakama, going all the way back to Pei Zayin and Beis, he says that let's just find it. Rav Yosi says Ksubasa al Nichse Bala Harishon. The ksuba is on the first husband. Rabbi Lezer says Harishon Zakai b'mitziyasa umas yodea forest nedereha. According to Rabbi Lezer, he says that the first one is Zakai to get her lost objects, her work, and being able to make for Nedarim. Fine. Okay, so we're going to be touching upon that piece of the Mishnah at this point. So, Rabbi Yossi Omer Ksubasa al Nichse Bal. So, Omer Rav Huna Basroi, the later opinion, namely the opinion of Rav Shimon, which again, let's just keep where we're at over here. The opinion of Rav Shimon. So again, Rabbi Yossi says the ksuba is al nichse bala, and Rabbi Lezer says rishon is zaka. Rav Shimon says biyasa o chalitzasa mi'achav shel rishon, that a bia or chalitza of the brother, the first one is poter sarasa, will pater the co-wife. Ben havlad mimenu mamzer. Okay, so let's keep going back and forth so we know who holds what. So he says as follows: the later opinion of Rav Shimon, he says basroi moidel kamoi. He agrees to the first opinion. Kamoi lo moidel basroi. But the first opinion does not agree to Rav Shimon's. Rav Shimon moidel Rabbi Lazar dema bia. The ikra isura vulkanis. So again, Rabbi Lazar in our Mishnah said that you're zeichet to the mitziyasa. Again, all these different things. The first husband is zeichet. So Rav Shimon talks about the whole din of being pater the tzara. So he says like this: Rav Shimon is moided to the idea of Rabbi Lazar that the first husband gets all the things. The ma'bia, the ikar isura vulkanis. So according to him, he says that when it comes to the bee itself, which is the ikar iser, he doesn't kanas, and therefore because of that, he says this din, the katani biyasa kaina oisa with the tzara, so that it has the ability to actually pater the tzara. So v'koshkin mitziyaso masiyadeha d'mamainahu. In that situation, it's only money. Rabbi Lezer loy moidel Rav Shimon. L'mitziyaso masiyadeha d'mamainahu lo kanas. So in that, we're not going to kanas, and therefore she gives it over to the first husband. Bia, regarding to the din of yibun to pater the tzara, the isurhu kanas. In that situation, there is a din kanas. V'tevayu moidele Rav Yosi. Now both of them will agree to the shita of Rav Yosi. Rav Yosi, let's make sure I am saying this. Rav Yosi is the opinion before them. He says ksubasa al nichse bal harishon. So Rav Yosi talks about the din of the ksuba. So they both agree to this notion regarding the ksuba. Hani diasva tute lokanis. When it comes to something in which will cause him to maybe want to stay, we're not going to kanas, and therefore he still gets the masyodeha. These are things which happen while you're still married. So v'kol shekin ksuba, then certainly when it comes to ksuba, the mishkul mepik koi, that's something in which is only given once they're divorced. You have Yosef lo moidelu. However, it doesn't work the other way around. Ksuba do mishkul mepiku do lo kanas. Maybe the only reason why it doesn't kanas and says that there's the din ksuba. Again, let's get the language. Ksubasal nechse bal harishain is because it's only given after they're already divorced, after they're gone. That's what the din of ksuba is. However, when it comes to this, which is given only afterwards, rather while she's still in his domain, the mitziyasa, the hafaras nadarm, mitziyasa, masyodeha. So therefore, in that case, we would kanas. Rav Yochanan Omer. So that's the shita of Rav Huna. Rav Huna explains that maybe one doesn't hold of the other's opinion. Rav Yochanan Omer, he says like this: Kamoi model basroi, basroi lo model kamoi. Rav Yossi model Rav Elazar. That Rav Yossi actually agrees to Rav Elazar. Ksuba dumididal kanis. When it comes to a ksuba, what is happening? Well, it's him giving it to her. So we don't kanas there, even though she's the one that she is more guilty because she wasn't careful before she got married. Nonetheless, we don't kanas her, even though it's going from him to her. Koshkin mitziyaso masyadeha delidel lididei. In that situation, certainly it goes from her to him, so certainly we're not going to kanas him. Rabbi Lezer lo moidile mitziyaso masyadeha hu delidel kanas, because it's given over from her to him. That's why we don't kanas. Avaksuba delidel lidida kanas. However, when it goes from him to her, why would we allow her to get it? And therefore we kanas. But both of them agreed to the shita of Rav Shimon. During the time of life, they don't kanas. So be it achar misal kol shekain. So when it comes to being pater the tsar, which is after misa, so certainly Rav Shimon lo moiduhu biahu do achar misal kanas. Abol hani demachayim kanas. So there's different ways that you can look at it, whether or not they agree with one another. TA 14. Isha shahalach mahasfar liknais b'masyadeha. Why would you kanas the masyadeha masiyasa more than the ksuba? And what's the svara the opposite way around? So we saw, this is TA 14. So on one side, maybe you should kanas the masyadeha because it's the asvatute, because they're staying together. That's when it happens, that you're collecting it even while they're still married. And the ksuba is only once they're gone. On the other side, maybe the ksuba more because the ksuba is given from him to her. And maybe in that case, we're not going to allow it to be given from him to her. For her to him, to give over her masyadeha, fine, we'll do that. However, when it comes to the other way around, by the ksuba, maybe not. Okay, so that's why there's a svara that you could hold of one or not the other, depending on how you look at it. Okay, let's continue now. Now, Nisei Shlo Bershus. We have to keep going back to this Mishnah. So, Nisei Shlo Bershus. So, what happened? So, first of all, it mentioned if Nisei Alpi Beistin, which means that the Beistin is the one that said she can get remarried because there was only one witness, so it's not that there were two witnesses and she didn't need a Beis Din. So in the event that it was through the Beis Din, so Tate says she has to leave the marriage, but she's putter from a carbon. Lo nises al pi Beis Din, which means that the other way around, that she actually had witnesses. So in that case, also it says Tate say, however, chayavas b'carbon. In this situation, we require her to bring a carbon because that's considered to be like b'shogeg. Rashi says over that's an oinus to pater from carbon because she should have been more careful still, which is hard to imagine because she had two witnesses. So how could that be b'shogeg? The Gemara is going to discuss that. So the Gemara says as follows: Nisa shel b'shos. So Rav Huna, Rav Hachi Hilchasa. This is actually the halacha. Rav Nachman Ganava Gnuve Lamalach. What are we stealing from stealers? Like what is this? If you hold like Rav Shimon, say it. Rav Shimon Ka'azla. Exactly what are you trying to do? Are you just trying to say in accordance to this opinion? Then just say that's who you hold like. If you want to say Iyamina halacha Rav Shimon mashma fil b'kamaisa, then you would think maybe the halacha is like Rav Shimon even in his first statement. So halacha Rav Shimon b'achreina. So then just be more specific and say the halacha is like Rav Shimon in the later statement. Kasha. Amina ki noim shachav Rav amrulaha shmaisa. We often hear this, that when he was dozing and sleeping is when this was said. Halacha machal de pligi. The fact that he says the halacha, it sounds like it's an argument. So my havelam evid, miyanis ansa. It doesn't make any sense. What could this person have done? After all, there was two Adim saying that he was dead. So exactly how do we understand this whole notion? Says Rashi, Rabban had Rav Shimon b'seifa b'nisis b'Adim. She got married with witnesses. So again, she has to be Teitzei, but she's Chai B'Karm. The question is, what else could she have done? Tanya, we learned as well. Kol arayos shebatoira, says Rashi, all the arayos she'omru shehin erva in srichos get mimenu. You don't need a get when it comes to that relationship because you're not married. Nimnise slami shehi erva love. In srichos menu get, says the Gemara. Chutz me'eshes ish. Shenises alpi bastin. When it comes to a married woman who gets married through the testimony, the bastin, the Gemara says alpi bastin who the boy gita. Mashma only alpi bastin. When the bastin tells you, that's when you're supposed to give a get. Alpi edim lo boy gita. However, if it's alpi edim, then you don't need a get. If you actually had witnesses, two witnesses saying, so then in that case you should not need a get. So money, Elam Rav Shimon. If you want to tell me this is like the sheet of Rav Shimon, Alpi based in me boy get. Is it true that if it's Alpi based in, if based in says that you can get remarried, is it true that according to him you need a get? Bosan Rav Shimon Omer also based in Behorasan, Kizadan Ish Beisha. Look in Rashi. Osu Behorasan Horoha Linase Be'ed Echad. If let's say there was one witness, which is Alpi Bastin, which means the Bastin is one that gave you permission. Alpi Edim Kishkagas Ish Be'isha. Edim little boy get. El Lav Rabbanan. So according to him, you don't need a get. So it must be according to the Rabbanan. And the Rabbanan are the ones that say you need a get. But when do the Rabbanan say you need a get? Dafka in a situation, as we're making that's diak, only in the situation where it's Alpi Bastin. However, Alpi Edim, you should not need a get. Well, only Rav Shimon he. V'tartach Rav Shimon Omer also based in Behorasan kikavanas ish beisha. Uboy get. Actually, according to Rav Shimon, he says that in that situation we do need a get. Alpi edim shloi bekavanas ish beisha. However, if there was witnesses, it was shloi bekavanas ish beisha v'lo boy get. So since it's not in that situation was not l'shem kedushin, so therefore in that situation you would not need a get. Says Rashi, ki kavanas ish beisha, ki penuyash neschaven lekadsha de boy gita. Kavana of an ish to an isha is a situation where again there's a kavana that of kedushin. Shalok bekavana, says Rashi, kabal penuyash lo shem kedushin. If let's say it was without kedushin, that's when you don't need a get. Ravashi Armel Indian isur katani. Actually, we're talking about isurin. Rashi says, "Well, oilam kedekas salkadat hamikar kizadin ish beishas ish." Miu in get lo kamari. Diavka kamei lo zadan boy gita. Hachi kamelhu. Based in Bahorasan kizadan ish beisha. Mitra al bala. That she's going to now be usher to her husband Alpi edim kishkagas ish beisha v'lo mitzra al bala. However, if let's say there was witnesses, according to this shita, if there was two witnesses that allowed her to get remarried, then she would not be usher to her husband. As we continue to Sadi al Amud Beis. Ravin Oimer Inyan Carbon Katani. Actually, the whole machlokas has to do with whether or not she's mechuyet to bring a carbon. So, based in B'hoirasan Kizadin Ish Be'isha. v'lomasi carbon. So this is considered to be a situation where it's like b'mezid, and therefore carbon's not going to be brought. Al pi edim, however, if you had witnesses, so in that situation it's kishkogas ish isha. It's like a shogeg umasi carbon. So therefore that's the difference. Whether or not only time you're going to bring a carbon is not in a situation where it's b'shogeg. So therefore that is only in a situation that you got married al pi edim, because you had two witnesses. So that's strong enough for you to be able to get married. However, if there was only one witness and the base didn't allow it, so in that situation, it's karv l'mezid. The ibois ema hakamaisa rabbanan. Actually, the original statement was rabbanan. The tartachi chutz meishes ish v'shenisis alpi beistin. Fine. Masabu. So we'll ask the following question: Mi amrinan my habel mavid. Do we say ma habel mavid? Oh, what could she have done? Right? There was two witnesses, so she shouldn't be held accountable. But Tanan, we don't say that. After all, kasav l'shem malchus says she'enu hogena, says Rashi. Sofer, you have a scribe. He needs to mention the king of Israel. He mentions the Roman king. The reason why the Romans are considered enohogenes because there was nothing unique about them, that they didn't have their own language, their own ksav, so there was really nothing which made them choshev. So they're considered to be like a malchus enohogenes. L'shem malchus madai, l'shem malchus yavan, l'binyan beis hachorban, l'chorban habayis, haya b'mizrach chasa b'marav. Let's say, again, you have to write the get in the proper place in the east, but it was actually in the west, or b'marav because of b'mizrach, teisim mizeh mizeh. So in that situation, if she got married based on that get, so she actually has to leave both marriages because that is not a good get. The whole hadarachim ha'elu ba, and all these other matters, says Rashi, kol hanach kulkuli demasnisin. Yamai. The question is, why does she have to leave these marriages? Lema ma havelam evid, right? Which Rashi says, svora haisa, she would get kosher. She didn't do anything wrong. She engaged and hired a sofer to write a get, and he didn't do it properly. So all of a sudden we say that when she gets married, she has to get, she has to leave both marriages. That doesn't seem to be extremely fair. In that situation, l'chayra, we still don't care. We say it doesn't matter. She's still not allowed to stay in this marriage. So the same thing over here. The fact that she got married al pi shnei edim, it doesn't make any difference. We're not going to say the svara of mahavel mevid. So Gemara says no. The reason why you cannot just say my havel mevid, because she could have done something. She could have had the get read over. Rashi says lefnei chacham. And therefore, the fact that she didn't do that, so she was a little bit negligent. She still could have done more. Rav Shimon Barashi Tashma. A kindness is yevimtai, a person who marries his yevama, b'holchat sarasa, and the co-wife goes because v'nises, and she gets remarried to someone else, because once you did yibum, so the other one is pater. V'nipsas zu islandess, and all of a sudden it turned out the woman that you had yibum with was an islandess, and therefore the bia that you had with her is not going to pater the tsara, because an islandess is a woman who is not shaykh for yibum, and therefore even though you did yibum, and now the tsara is no longer pater, now what happens? Teisim mizumazu. So we say that this poor co-wife actually has to leave her new marriage, because after all, she really was not allowed to get married, because she is now zokuk, because the original yibum that and bia which was done with an islandess. The whole hadrachim ha'eluba b'may name of madhavi leilam evid. Why doesn't the tsarat say, well, it's not my fault? Why, what was the problem? I was allowed to get remarried because once yibum is done by my co-wife, I'm allowed to get married. So now it turns out that my co-wife all along was an islandess, so all of a sudden now I'm in trouble. So the answer is she still could have done something too. Iboyle tune, she could have delayed. It's possible that, again, she didn't have to jump so quickly to immediately get married, and therefore the fact that she did, she was a little bit negligent. Rabbi Tashma, Kol Arayos She'amru Paitroi Sor Sehen, all of the arayos that we say that the co-wife is pater, Lashuk, below Chalitza, says Rashi, V'yibum, could go in test vav noshim, the perakama, Daf Beis Amud Aleph, Rashi says. If you remember, yes, this is the same Masechta, right? That all the way back in the beginning of this Masechta, is a situation of 15 women. If somehow you were linked to them, and you were obviously not allowed to marry, let's say, your daughter, but that also will pater the tsar as well from Yibum. So Koresh Omer Pater Sorasem Holchot Saros. So the co-wife now goes because she's pater from Yibum or Chalitza as well. V'nisun, she gets married. V'nimsu Elu Ionus. So it turns out, again, this whole notion that the Ereva was an Ionus, and therefore, because of that, she was never even shaykh to be connected to begin with, even though, again, she was related to you, let's say. But nonetheless, Lamafreya, that Ereva of Ionus is not going to pat the Tzara, because the whole original marriage to the Ionus is really Mechachtos, and therefore was not really his wife. And therefore, that's not considered to be Tsaras Ereva. And therefore, this Sarah is now Zokak Leibam again. So it's the same question. So again, a boy lay lem tune. She could have waited. Omer Rabba Tashma. Kasav Sefer Get Leish. So if a man writes a Sefer Get to a man, B'shuver Leisha, and a receipt to a woman, and he made a mistake, V'nasan Gel Isha, and he gave the get to the woman, V'shoiver Ish, and the receipt to the man, V'nasu Zel Zev Zel Zeh, and it was given to this one, this one, this one, this one. Hari Haget Yoitzim Matachas Yidei Ish, and then afterwards it leaves his hands, V'shoiver Matachas Yidei Isha, Teisim Ezem Zeh, B'chol Deracham Elu Ba B'yamai Nema Ma'havlo Mevid, Sokan Rashi, Shabal Noisin Schar Haget. So the man paid wages for the get to be written. The Isha Koseves Shovar, and for the woman it was written a receipt. Ligvos Ksubasa, Manbal, that she should to collect the ksuba from the husband. Velase Slo Hashovar, and then to give to him the receipt that she collected the ksuba. She'im lo haisano senes lo shovar, because if shovar was not given over, lo yifro lo ksuba, then he's not going to collect the ksuba. The only way she gets the ksuba is she says, okay, you want the ksuba money? Fine, first give me a receipt that I gave you it. So benas nuzelazeh, kasvur zula kabel get miad bala. So the person thought that she was already makabel to get from the husband. Bekibla shovar, and she was makabel the receipt. Vihinasnul get. So in that situation, again, it was a whole mistake. It wasn't supposed to be done. It was supposed to be ripped up. In other words, when a get is in this situation, it should have been ripped so that this issue should not have taken place. Amar Vashi Tashma Shina. If you deviated from the Shema Shem Ira Shem Ira, so it was the wrong. His name was wrong, her name was the wrong city. So again, even though the get was given, and let's say they got remarried, so Teitzim is emezeh. Again, Lochar, you should say, what do you mean? I didn't know. I didn't know my name was, the wrong name on the get. So as we said before, you should have the get read to a scholar to verify that it's good before you got married. Let's say a person got married through a bald get. What's that? Rashi says, beget mekusher kamairi. We're talking about a get which is a get mekusher, which there's two different gittin. One's called a get pashut, a simple get, which is a straight get. The get mekusher is like all folded up, and there's signatures by each fold. Says Rashi, get pashut Edom metocho, the witnesses are on the inside. Get mekusher Edom me'acharav, their signatures on the back, on the other side. Kishay koiflo, when you fold it over. Chaysim aid al kafel, so he signs on that fold. The chayz v'kafel v'chaysim aid sheni v'chein shlishi. They keep, every time it's folded, the get mekusher, it's signed on the other side. V'im hayu kshara marubin me'edav, and let's say there are more folds than witnesses, right? Or ties than witnesses, hainu get kirech. That's considered like a bald get, because there was supposed to be more signatures on every fold. Upasul. And therefore, a get kirech is pasul. So if let's say you got married based on the get kirech, tezim is emezeh. V'chul. So again, the question is, how's this accept? Why are we strict? After all, shouldn't we say may have a lemeved? So the answer is iboile la kruye legita. Again, it could have been read over and analyzed, and they would have noticed that this was a problem. Rapapa savula meved uvda b'may havila meved. So he wanted to be able to do based on this concept. It says Rashi lahachzer ubala eshes ish shenisis be'edim, that she should return to her husband in the situation where she was married through the two witnesses. So Amrulay Rav Huna Beredi Rav Yeshua Rav Papa Vosanya Kol Hani Masnyosa. But we learned that all the things before that that's not an acceptable excuse. My Havilameba doesn't work. So Amrulay V'Lav Shenininu, didn't we learn? Lav Shenininu, did we not learn? Amrulay V'Ashenuye Leiku V'Lismoich. She says you should learn and rely on these answers. Says Rashi, Im zed doichik umetaretz lidchai katshuva anan memil shamin the loyam reading my havlamebed. We see clearly, even if you think some of these answers are not so exact, doesn't make any difference. It still has the psak. Okay, fine. And because of that, v'nimna Rashi says v'lo obed obed. He didn't actually do this. Amrav Ashi ulakula loichashinan. So l'kul we're not chayish, says Rashi, im nises bebeistin. Let's say she got married through the beistin. There wasn't two witnesses. B'yachach yotza koil, and then there's a voice that came out. Shabal achai, their husband's alive. L'fanenu l'ba, but he just never came. So in that situation, what's the din? L'kula loichashinan. So hey kula, ilema kola debasar nisuin. Let's say there's a rumor that he was alive. He didn't come. There's just a rumor that he's alive, but it happened after she got married. Ha'amr Ravashi Chanazimna. We already heard this before. Ha'amr Ravashi, as we continue to Tzadi Beis Amud Aleph, Kol Kala the Bas in Suin. Anytime there's some type of a rumor that happens after she got remarried, Loichashinan. That we're not going to be concerned. Says Rashi, Kigoin Kayin Shanasa Isha, the Kayin who married a woman, Yachach Yatza Leha Koil, Gerusho Zoina. So it turned out, I heard a rumor that she was a Zoina. So we're not going to listen to that. So in that situation, we're not going to listen. So it's a different pashas. Madatema Hoyil Vasoil Beidina. Since they came to Beis Din, the Sharinan, and they allowed her to get married, Kikola de Kamei Nesuin Dami V'Titzar Kamashmuan. Says Rashi, Hoyil B'Hutzrochel Lavola Beis Din. Since they needed to go to Beis Din, Lahatira, to matter her, Alma B'Chai, even in her lifetime, Havi Misafkinon Le Kaidim Nesuin. There was already this doubt whether or not he was in fact dead or not, so she had to go to the Beis Din, because it was for the Beis Din to accept the one witness. The Hilchach Kamish Yotza Hakoil Mi Oisa Shadami Kamashmu, and therefore you would think that's considered to be like before they got married, and therefore the din is no. Okay. Okay. TB possibly 15. Hara Basil Nasa B'Holcha B'Kilkula. Maho Kilko Liba de Kuliyama, Maho Kilko Liba de Chadman de Omer. Let's see if we did this. That's going to be tomorrow's daf.